Hello, hello, and welcome back to Live Lighter. I am your host, Jessica Berg, and today's conversation is one that I feel that so many women will benefit from, and not enough people are talking about it. And we've kind of like teed up and built to this conversation in the past podcast episodes where we talked about presence, we talked about coming into the body through our five senses. And now we're going to kick it up a notch. And I have an amazing guest, Shannon Hamaker. She is a sex and relationship coach and a somatic practitioner. And she has personally helped me on my journey to really find more freedom, self-love, and power in this specific area. So I'm so excited about this conversation. It's going to go in multiple ways. So we'll just see where the wind takes us for this one.
Yes, we will. This could get interesting.
Oh my gosh. So Shannon, one of the things that I wanted to start off with is if you could just kind of share with everyone a little bit about what you do in your day-to-day
hmm
life and how you support women. And I know you support men as well.
Yes, I do. I just love helping people get out of their heads, into their bodies. And you know how there's some people that benefit. I mean, I love therapy. It got me to where I am today, but there's people that will go to therapy for a long time and nothing changes. They like get to an awareness point, but then the deeper work is still left to be had. And so I help people get deeper in this conversation around sex and intimacy, which can get super interesting because most of us did not learn about how to talk about sex and intimacy. And so I honestly teach a lot of people the basics of sex ed that they didn't get when they were kids, combined with connecting to their bodies.
So
Yeah.
I love that you're starting with this because I was just on a women's retreat and there was one session where it was about our pelvic health. And one of the things that we were talking about is so much of our generation and past generations where this isn't something that's talked about. And in fact, it's frowned upon to talk about it, or you get these unpleasant emotions tied to it, like guilt or shame. And the people who are teaching you about it is maybe like your fourth grade teacher or your seventh grade gym teacher, which
Mhm.
is so backwards in so many ways. What are your thoughts around that, just as far as like the education system around this
My
topic
gosh.
specifically?
That's honestly, Jess, that's what got me curious about this was I lived in Southern California and I had a really great sex ed experience in 6th grade and not so great in 9th grade, but I had enough curiosity built up in 6th grade where then, we put questions in a box and I remember someone asking what 69 was and I heard the response and I was like, gross, I am never doing that. And then we moved to Tennessee, so buckle the Bible belt when I was a junior, and I noticed a stark contrast in the way that teenagers were talking about sex or really not talking about it was so it just led me to so many curiosities. And then when I went to college, I took a human sexuality class. My degree is in human development, child and family studies. So that was a part of our experience was learning about this big piece of being a human. And my professor was visibly uncomfortable. And so I just kept thinking, why are people so uncomfortable about this? And why are there little pockets that are not talking about it? And so I worked in the social service field for a long time. And then I had the opportunity to be a sexual health educator by way of sex toy parties. Do you remember hearing about those pure romance
Oh, yeah,
parties?
I remember that.
Yes, so it was like this platform where I could go into a space and meet women literally where they were at in a place where they felt most comfortable talking about sex in their friends' living rooms. And I had all
Mhm.
kinds of church groups and people in mansions, people in in the projects, as we call them here. So a wide range of women who wanted to know basic things like how do I have an orgasm, or why am I so dry, or why does my husband want it and I don't. And so it just continued to, over the course of almost 20 years, stir up all of these questions that I would then go and figure out for them and bring back. So I learned a lot about, after having kids, after having breast cancer, and I became one of the training consultants that would travel around the US and teach other consultants how to talk about sex and make sure that people felt safe about it. So that was my, like, at the time, I was like, there's got to be a different way that I can reach more people. But it was such a gift and an honor to be in so many living rooms talking about that with hundreds of women. And so here I am now learning that it's not just about toys or lubricants or, even communication tools, which I think are super important. But the first step is learning what you learned or did not learn as a kid. What are some of the things that you're carrying as truth that you're now living from this lens of, like, sex is dirty or gross, or we save sex until marriage, so many different.
Be the good girl.
Be the good girl, yes.
Yeah, that
Or
was
be
mine.
sexy, but not too sexy. Yeah,
Yeah,
that be the good girl was yours. Yeah. And what does that even mean? Like, can you prove that that's something that is a truth?
Yeah, and then if you don't live up to that, then there's so much shame and guilt that comes around it. When you're just like, oh my God, I've completely messed up, and that becomes your storyline. And it's really interesting because just a little bit backstory. So Shannon, is it okay if I share just where we met and everything? Okay. So Shannon, I have a certification. Her and I both have, we've studied with Anat Perry in her TCS mastery method, which is somatic and inner child focused. And in that program, Shannon is one of the primary coaches that kind of supports people to really give us deep feedback on our facilitation and our own healing. And so I got paired with Shannon throughout my entire program, which was a perfect match. And I got to reap the benefits of her medicine. And it was an area that I didn't even realize how much I had the opportunity to heal in. And there was so much for me, like guilt and shame. And what I started to realize was just this disconnect that I had that I'd had within myself for that area of my body, but also my life. And then when I started to work with Shannon on healing those parts and shifting those beliefs and really releasing myself and liberating myself from the guilt and the shame and just all the other stories that went along with it, I found so much power within myself. I felt so much liberation. And one of the things that I feel was the deepest was my level of self-love that I was able to take even further. I've loved all the different little versions of Jessica, and then this was an area of my life where I got to love myself in a whole new way. And I mean, my marriage has benefited from it. I'm more myself and feel more confident in myself. So this is just such a powerful area that women can tap into to really liberate themselves and find power and self-love. That's been my experience. So I would love to hear what you see and like what your thoughts are.
That's so powerful. Sexual health educator Shannon was so different than sexual coach Shannon, somatic coach Shannon, because I had a version of that too. My version was sex is for him, if I can please him, if I can, so focused on him, and also feeling like I was too much because I was the higher desire person in the relationship, but still not fully showing up in my confident self. I was like more grabby, wanting him to help me. And he was not in a place either. He had his own set of beliefs and had some sexual trauma that we didn't even realize. 1 in 4 women have been sexually abused, and that's just what's been reported. And then 1 in 6 men. And the topic of men and sexual abuse is a whole nother ball game, and it shows up in so many different ways that we didn't realize. So this journey of being able to get curious about myself and create safety in myself and give him the space to learn to create safety for him was such a gift, because we got to learn, what does connection look like for me? So we took a sacred pause in our relationship sexually, not in a place of like, I'm withholding from you, but let's figure this out. Let's take a sacred pause. And there's a book, oh goodness, I can't remember the name of it. It's such a great book. It's Liberating Love. That's what it is.
And it talks
about, it's great. It helps identify some of the sneaky ways that codependency can show up in sex and relationships. And it helps break those patterns of codependency, from the level of like, of awareness and acceptance. And then being able to take that and really work on that somatically, like what emotions are connected to that, can be so powerful. So that's kind of what we did, where I said, I just need 4 months to figure out how my body works, the shame that comes up, self-pleasure practices, owning my sexual self. Like, what does that even look like when it's not tied to this need for you to be a part of it? And that gave me so much room to, it was a part of the time where I was getting my sex coaching certification. So I was dipping my toe into the somatic work. We were learning about vulva mapping and, self-pleasure practices, and noticing what would come up for us when that happened. And I found such reverence from this place that I had been told was gross or dirty, or just don't even think about it, when, oh my gosh, you're so right, Jess. It holds so much power when you learn the gifts of understanding your cycle and understanding that there's no coincidence. It's all, we're divinely created. And there's some things that are keeping us, there's some blocks keeping us from our desire. It's not like we have lost our libido. We just have layers of stress and, performance, and the 5 personality patterns that I imagine you've talked about on your podcast before.
Yep.
The patterns that show up in overwhelm have created these blocks to the access for our pleasure. So that was the time for me to remove those blocks. And I used a lot of tools, like OMGYes is a great resource. Have you heard of it?
No.
This is I forgot about this one. This was a big part. OMGYes it was done by Indiana University, which is the largest sexual health research center in the nation. And they interviewed thousands of women on self-pleasure and what they enjoyed. And then they created a video series on all these different techniques and ways that you can self-pleasure, and things on the G-spot and circling and tapping on the clitoris. I was like, tapping on the clitoris? Like, I had no idea all of these things as a sexual health educator, that there were so many different ways that we could engage with curiosity, hold the judgment, and to see how our bodies could be opening to pleasure because of all those layers, those blocks. It takes a long time to slowly uncover,
Yeah. And there's things that you said where even I can attest to not having the education on my own body. Like, there's a documentary, and I'm sure you have seen it. As I've gone down this exploration myself in my own healing and liberation, my friend was telling me about, it's on Netflix, and it's by Gwyneth Paltrow, and it's called
Sex, Love, and Goop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where they interview Betty Dodson, and Betty Dodson lets Gwyneth Paltrow know that she's calling her female parts the wrong thing. It's not a vagina, it's a vulva.
Yes.
And the vagina is actually the birth canal. And I, at 43, was learning this for the first time. And I ran, like, after I watched the documentary the next day, I remember I was sitting with my daughter who's 8, and I was informing her because I want her to be educated. So she found out at 8, I found out at 43, but it's just like, that's how backwards we are on understanding our own body, let alone the pleasure practice. I had a friend last year ask me about that. I was like, what are you talking about? That's a thing? That's something I should be making time for? And that's a whole new, like, just a whole new way to understand and connect to yourself more deeply, because I didn't know what I wanted.
Yes. And I tell you what, like, sex as an obligation, the pressure to feel like it's a chore, or even when it's from a place of like, yes, I want to be intimate, but not knowing that there's access to this whole other menu of items that are great for intimacy and connection. It's mind-blowing. And so being able to have resources like your friends, first of all, I feel like talking to friends is so important. That show, yes, so important. And Netflix, that I think Sex, Love, and Goop is one of the series that she had. And then there was another one with Betty Dodson, who since has passed away, but Betty Dodson would do, yes, yeah. So in memorial RIP for Betty Dodson, because she would gather all these women in this New York City loft and show them where their vulvas were, teach them their anatomy.
She had them
It's so powerful.
hold a mirror up to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That practice in and of itself. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of listeners listening to this episode and being like, "Well, are they really talking about that?" We are, and more people should be talking about this.
Yes, do it. Check out your vulva. I know it's hard. It's hard enough to see our vaginas and vulvas without, I mean, we got to get in these weird positions.
Mm-hmm.
And think about it. Men see a lot. I feel like they just have had a lot of access to sex conversation, pornography, whether it's accurate or not. There's just some more access to their sexuality in my experience. And so for the women that I work with, it's setting the intention of what's even going on down there. Let me take a look.
Mm-hmm.
And getting a book that shows the anatomy, or just tapping into some curiosity around sex ed for kids. Like, if you have kids in your life, it's a great excuse to learn for yourself. So then you get to share with them all the things that you wish you would have known.
Well, and that's a whole, I'm hopeful that I feel I'm hearing this more in my parent circles, where that the conversation comes up, right, as our kids get older. I want them coming to me for those questions. Like, I want them to know that I'm a safe space that will always give them honest answers, because that's not how we grew up. And we didn't have the internet. So can you imagine having access to the internet to get those answers? Ooh.
Yeah, there's so much false information out there. I love that distinction, Jess. And I think, the idea that there should be one big talk, it's actually lots of little talks.
Ooh, I love
noticing that. Yes, it's a lot of little talks that may be complete before you're ready to complete it. Noticing how your kids, if you're working with Jess, if you're listening to her, I imagine you're learning about your energy and your somatic awareness, getting out of your head and into your body. Notice how your kids may gloss over when you're sharing information with them, and when they are like, that's enough. Because that's your cue to just zip it and wait for another opportunity. I loved learning this at the time that I did, because both of my kids were going through puberty. And at the time, he was like 13, 14. We were watching shows together. So I didn't always enjoy the shows, but we watched things like All American or Outer Banks. And it provided great conversation and bonding time for us to talk about, what do you think about that? Like, why do you think she was drinking so much? Or why do you think she threw up her food? Like, there's so much context around eating disorders and sex, and, how genders are perceived, and how just like so much ample opportunity to pause and ask a question, or do you have questions about this? And I remember watching that show, what was it? All American. And then my son said, Mom, a bunch of kids are talking about that show, Euphoria. He was in 8th grade. He was talking about, that show, Euphoria?
My husband's watching it. I haven't seen it.
Oh my gosh, it's intense. He said, will you watch it with me? Before he actually watched it. Will you watch it with me? Because it sounds good. And I'm like, yeah, Zendaya, cool,
Yeah.
So we start watching it, and I pause, and I'm like, wow, this is a lot, because there's a lot of drugs and a lot of, like, there's some trans stuff, and there's some, just a lot, not good or bad, just a lot of humaning.
Yeah.
And that's what we get to do, is create that open dialogue of, like, instead of me saying, I can't believe you want me to watch this with you, leaning into the, wow, this is a lot of stuff happening. Tell me what your thoughts are on it. And I feel like that really set that stage of being open for him to share. And he has shared more and more that I've had to brace myself. But I'm so grateful that he's sharing and asking questions.
I love the television show as kind of just an open door, because what we some of us might think when that show comes on, we might react with, okay, turn that off. I don't, that's too much. Or we like cringe or fast forward through it, versus using that as an opportunity to like ask questions like, why do you think they reacted that way? How do you feel as you're watching this? I love that. What a
Mm-hmm.
great parental tip.
Yes, I think it also buys me time. Anytime I start to feel overwhelmed come on, I lean into
Yeah.
curiosity with the questions, not
Yeah.
only with my kids, but with my husband of like, wow, I never thought of it that way. I'm curious as to why you did that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Loving
Oh,
curiosity.
loving curiosity. So one
Yeah.
of the things I wanted to ask you too, because the the not only is it an access source of power and self-love and liberation, I also have seen once we start to find that within ourselves in this area of our lives, it really does ripple into all other areas of our lives, like how we show up at work, how we show up in different circles, how we go after our goals, like our confidence. So, what are your thoughts as you have experienced yourself, but also like with clients where you've seen like how has this shown up for women in other areas of their life or men too, just anyone?
Hmm. Mm. I often work with the women in
Mhm.
a dynamic where they're having challenges with sex. Both partners want to, one feels more pressure, the other feels pressured, or yeah, one is pressuring. There's the pressure protection cycle. I'll share that.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I would love to
there's
hear.
one partner is putting pressure on the partner to have sex, and our bodies are doing what they learn to just protect. And so there's this protection of shutting down, like no access to sexual energy, to the vulva, to the vagina, and it can be super subtle. It's not like I'm completely shut down. It's just like a gentle like pull away, like, ooh, I don't think I am open to that. Even
Yeah.
when you desire that, there's something that comes online where your body, if especially if you're burnt out or there's just too much going on, it's too much. So
Yeah.
what I encourage women to do is take that time, their version of a sacred pause. Not a pause doesn't work for everybody, but the invitation is to get curious of like, what kind of space do you need to reconnect to yourself? And can you share that with your partner with curiosity of like, I think this is what I need. In the meantime, I'd love to stay connected in these ways. Like, let's still co-parent and, go for a walk or date nights, but let's just pause on the penis and the vagina penetration. Even distinguishing sex is a whole nother topic because
Yeah.
sex is not just penis and the vagina. So being able to allow them to soften and get curious and give themselves space to reconnect to themselves can be so supportive to even having access to then looking around the world and saying, what brings me pleasure? What brings me joy? How can I romanticize? I think I remember saying this to you. How can you romanticize your day every day where
Yep.
your tea is like, oh, let's think about where this tea came from. What kind of tea is it? What kind of taste do you notice? Do you smell? Bringing all of the senses into it. And connecting in that way, the little pleasure and delight that the world offers us just in being the world.
Yep.
Nature, I'm watching trees outside sway, noticing there's so much of the elements in our world that are very sensual
That we're
if you
rushing
think about it.
past.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So slowing down, allowing space for sensuality to even be present, for you to be able to engage with it. So to answer your question about how does this affect them, I think first and foremost, they start to notice, oh my gosh, this child that I have that I'm engaging with every day, this the woods outside of my house, how magical are they? The ice cream that we get, feeling that on my tongue. So starting to slow down and notice those things, it's just bringing joy into all aspects of their life. And then I notice for some of the women that I work with who are starting to set boundaries for themselves, where they start to, oftentimes we start a relationship with someone at a time where we are at the same emotional level, if there is such a
Yeah.
thing, or
Yeah.
the same emotional connection at the time. We're not meant to be growing at the same pace.
Mm-mm.
And for the women that I'm working with at perimenopause, like 40, 41 and up, there's a pain point where they feel like, I've got to learn this. There's something bigger than this. I can't hold all this anymore, and things start to look different. And so they start to show up differently through that transition of, okay, if my period was meant to be, it's very cyclical, and this is a cyclical part of life, this transition into menopause. Do I want to continue fighting it, or do I want to continue to look for the joy and pleasure in that experience too? And that comes online at work and in relationship and in parenting and with friendships. And when that happens, there's no more having to try to force people to do what you want. It's just like, here I am. And there's something about a grounded, confident woman who embodies her sexuality, is not having like in her sexual power of like having it drip all over everyone for, I need attention.
Yeah.
But more of like, this is just me. I just am in my essence of what feels sensual and sexual to me. It's like a freaking magnet. It is like I went through this, and I was at a training with a friend in Austin, and men were opening doors for me. They were offering me seats. And my friend was like, my God, are you ovulating? And I was like, I think it's next week. She was like, your sexual energy is just like opening all these doors, and I'm pretty sure everybody wants to have sex with you. I was cracking up. It was so funny.
It's a layer of
And
confidence
yes.
and to your point, it's just a woman who can be so centered in her sensuality and grounded in that and feel so connected to it. It is magnetic. It's beautiful
Mhm.
and it's
Mhm.
powerful.
And I'm guessing you feel some of this come online. Have you noticed that a little
God,
bit for
yes.
you? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel that for me it's I am mm, there's not this thought of like, how am I being perceived type thing when I walk into a room. It's more so feeling like I am who I am and I feel really good about that. And
Mhm.
I'm not seeking approval or even like the connection thing. It's just I'm in my element and feeling really good about that. Um, and then the other area that I've seen, and this is still one from a like growth perspective that I'm still working through, is the communication. Like you were saying, even communicating with your partner about like, okay, well, I'm going to do this pause, or here's what I like, here's what I'm discovering I like, here's what I'm discovering I don't like. That is a whole other area of growth from a communication standpoint that then carries into other areas of our lives too, because we feel more assertive and like, okay, I am safe to say what I want and need. And that matters.
Mhm. Yes, ma'am.
Do,
And
do,
if
do,
I
do,
can talk
do.
about sex and my desires and my expectations in my relationship, I can do that anywhere.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I could talk about anything.
Yeah.
Mm.
And one of the things that I noticed is starting to see women who seemed confident in their sexuality, and trying to, because part of my journey was turning 40, 41, and having all these people start to ask questions about perimenopause. And I was like, there really wasn't a whole lot of information. There was a wealth of information on pregnancy, and it's so beautiful and natural and part of being a woman. And then I started to pull up these things about going through menopause, and it was like, women pulling their hair out. I mean, if you Google the two, pregnancy and menopause, especially this was like 6 or 7 years ago, it's gotten a lot better. But the messages behind getting older was like, what is happening? And, I went to an OBGYN and asked for information on this period of time. And she was like, well, we have a med spa doing a Botox party. And I'm like, no, that's not what I want. And so I started to look for those women who looked magnetic, who were also like activated something in me where it was a little triggering. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's that age and she's wearing that thing. Or
Ooh,
the thing
I love
that
it.
yeah, yes, and that was an invitation to me to like, oh, is that something that I want? Is that a little envy that's creeping in?
Well, I love that as and this is for anyone who's listening. So as you start to find this judgment cometh in you, allow yourself to pause and get curious of like, why am I feeling this? Is this because
Hmm.
it's what I want? I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I could clearly see that because I would see women dancing. I started following people. I wanted to find the joy in this transition and this natural transition of life, of a decade long experience. And so I started looking for those women, and I would see women dancing. Led me to ecstatic dance, which we've talked about.
Love
Dancing
ecstatic
has
dance.
been, oh, it's been so wonderful, such a gift to learn to be in my body and feel like I can be fluid and move and connect with other people in ways that I've never connected before, of just being like, here I am. I'm going to dance this way because it feels good, and allowing that stress to be released and finding more joy and pleasure in that connection through experiences like that. So many wonderful things about that time of life and this work. And,
Mm,
you don't have to be going through menopause or perimenopause to notice these shifts and changes. Like if you're still in the throes of parenting young kids, or
oof, that's a
if you're
phase.
working,
Yeah.
yes, that is a huge phase. And if you are still working in corporate jobs, how can you bring a little pleasure and delight into each day? We need more feminine energy in those corporate places.
We do. We do. Bit by
Yeah.
bit, I'm hoping to see that happen more and more. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, for people who, because for people who are listening, so Shannon came and supported the women in my alumni community, because last month, for the month of April, it was sensuality and pleasure, and it was a wide spectrum of people who, or a wide spectrum of like just interaction. You had people who were just ready to dive on in, or who were like right there with Shannon on their experience and like just, or their curiosity. And then you had people who were, you know, felt safe enough to say like, this makes me real, like this conversation I've been taught is uncomfortable. So baby steps. And it was really beautiful to see the full spectrum. So for the women and the listeners who are more in that, like, okay, I'm still at the phase where I can't believe I made it to this point of the podcast without like cringing and shrinking in my
Yay.
seat.
Yeah.
What's the best way for them to, but knowing that they want to explore this more, but they want to take more baby steps, is your suggestion kind of like what you just said, where it's finding just the little ways to tap into your senses and pleasure, like even just like maybe touching the back of your neck when you're doing the dishes, whatever it might be. But what is your experience on kind of slowly hand holding people into this bit by bit?
Yeah. Well, first of all, cheering all of you on who are still here with us listening to this conversation. So proud of you, and I hope you feel the pride in yourself that you're still here, leaning into what's possible. One of the things I would suggest, I have a book right here that was super helpful for me. And it's, the awareness piece, I think, is first. Before you start looking for pleasure and touching, and especially depending on what pattern you run, if you're more of like the person who runs rigid, or, wants the information before, like the why before the how, This is a great workbook. It's called Come As You Are workbook. It's a practical guide to the science of sex. So she has a lot of great
Ooh,
questions in here. She also has a great context of what's happening. Like there's responsive desire and spontaneous desire. So you can start to get curious with that. The other thing is, I would get a couple of books that are for kids on sex
interesting.
because it really helps. And if you have kids, nieces, nephews, whatever, do it with them if you feel comfortable enough. I found that even with my kids as a sexual health educator, knowing all this information, it was helpful to have resources that were short and sweet and could speak to the questions that they had. So there's a website called amaze.org, and they have little clips of cartoon responses to frequently asked questions around sex and intimacy. And it's so well done, comprehensive, fact-based, that I think it gives permission and it gives the context before you start getting into the body, which can be so helpful of,
Yeah.
because going right to the body and I'm going to look for pleasure, I'm not exactly sure why. And I never really learned the foundational, like how my anatomy works. That can be a great place to start. So
I
Come As
love
You
that.
Are, Emily Nagoski. And then there's some great kids books if you want to know what those books
Amazing.
are, I can
Amazing. And I'll
share.
put all the
Yeah.
links to everything that you've shared in the show notes too. Ah,
Yeah. And then the other thing I would do is just get super curious with the things that you're telling yourself about sex. So, is sex dirty or gross? Can you prove it? Is it a truth? Is it only for sex? Or sorry, is it only for marriage? Do because if you didn't wait till marriage, but that was really pushed in growing up or in the religion, you may still have so much shame that's covering your access to pleasure that being able to, get clear on was that even true for me can be so validating. So I would say those are the two best places to start.
I love it. I love
Mm-hmm.
it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, is there anything else that you want to make sure the listeners know just from your world? And obviously, I want them to know how to get in touch with you, how they can work with you, all of the things.
Mm-hmm. I think two things that I sometimes skip over and even making sure that people know is one, we need about 20 minutes to feel aroused and ready to go. So, the average bout of sexual intercourse in the US is usually about 7 to 8 minutes. And that's part of the challenge, is that we're not giving ourselves enough time to fully drop in and have access to pleasure. And then we have subpar or sometimes painful sex. And that just perpetuates the disconnect.
Mm,
So slowly building this connection to yourself and then bringing your partner in to engage in intimate activities, not necessarily P and the V, but that can help rebuild that connection. And then lube, better is better, live, laugh, lube, like all the lube. There's a handful of people that have natural lubrication very easily, but I always recommend, because Indiana University did a study, and 85% of women say they prefer using a lubricant over not. It's just more comfortable. It protects the vaginal walls. So give it a go if you haven't tried like a water-based lubricant. Astroglide is great. There's some other great ones too. There's Woo, More Play. There's so many great lubricants out there.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. There's probably about another hour's worth of content that we could be covering, but we'll have to have
Yes.
you come back.
Yeah,
Part
I
two.
would be
Part
happy.
two. So how
Sex
can
Ed Part 2.
people Sex Ed Part Two. So how
Mm-hmm.
can people find you? How can they work with you? All the
You
deets.
can find me on Instagram, my first and last name, Shannon Hamaker. It's Shannon, Shannon, Ham, as in masturbate, A, K as in kinky, ER, raunchy.
Love it.
Yeah, you can find me on there. I post a lot of things on there, and I do virtual experiences. And then also, I have two retreats a year, and we've got one coming up in September just outside the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. And we'd love to have you. It's a chance for women to fully reconnect. And yeah, just there's some magic that happens in groups when we work together like that. It's like the
There
healing
is.
is amplified.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, her retreats are beautiful. I plan on being there for September.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you
Thank
for this
you.
platform and all that you're
Yes.
doing and for believing in yourself and getting curious. You could have easily been like, nope, I'm in this, comfy place in my marriage, but you pushed your edges more, and there's just a beauty in getting to witness people who lean in
Thank
on
you.
believing in themselves in that way. Yeah.
You gave me goosebumps. I'll receive that witnessing. Thank you. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, I will leave all the ways that you can get in touch with Shannon, her website, Instagram. I can speak from experience. She does wonders. So if you are looking to tap into all the different ways that you can liberate yourself and expand in this area of your life, I can't recommend Shannon enough.
Oh, good.